Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. I'm Gulo from Jadi PNS, will be your host. Now we are with Melissa Ingraham, an environmental and climate scientist from the Bahamas. Hello, Melissa. How are you?
Hi, Gulo. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good too. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us, and we are really excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, and I might be more excited than you are.
Thank you. Melissa, could you please give us a little bit of your background?
Yeah, so I am an environmental scientist, like you said. I grew up here in the Bahamas, born and raised, the capital, Nassau, New Providence. I am 26 years old, and I've basically been in the conservation, biodiversity, and just overall environmental, marine, terrestrial field as long as I could remember. I did branch off and study environmental science for my bachelor's degree, my master's degree in climate change most recently. And now I'm also the title holder of the Miss Universe Bahamas 2023.
Wow, thank you, Melissa. You hold a bachelor's degree in environmental science and also a master's in climate change. Can you share how your academic journey has shaped your passion for environmental advocacy and your role as Miss Universe Bahamas 2023?
Yeah, definitely. So, having a bachelor's degree in environmental science, I would say, has provided me with a strong foundation in understanding the natural environment and the impact that our human activities are having on the planet. And the foundation of that has encouraged me to deepen my awareness of environmental issues and instilled a sense of responsibility in me to address them. And with that, I ended up studying for my master's degree in climate change, which I would say has sharpened my understanding of one of the most pressing global issues and challenges, which is climate change. And now, of course, being honored with the title of Miss Universe Bahamas 2023, I have a very unique platform and audience that I can raise awareness about environmental issues. Using my background, my academic background, it's really enabled me to effectively communicate complex issues like climate change, like conservation and sustainability. And I have the ability to engage in outreach, education, advocacy, efforts to promote environmental sustainability and climate action. And I'm very honored and proud of that, especially in my country's 50th year of independence. We are naming it the Golden Jubilee Year.
Wow, that's interesting. And please tell us about your upbringing in Nassau, Bahamas, and how it influenced your love for the environment. And you had any specific moments or experiences that stand out in your childhood that ignited your interest in environmental conservation?
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said, I grew up born and raised here in the Bahamas. The environment has always been a very important aspect to me from a very young age, for whatever reason. I guess just because it's amazing and beautiful. But I attended a lot of environmental camps, like summer camps and internships from a very young age, which would have exposed me to the local natural environment. And I think really engraved the love that is instilled within me for the environment. And I was also a competitive swimmer. From as early as I could remember, my parents had me signed up to swim. And just the merging of the two, somehow I got scuba dive certified by
Wow.
Patty by grade 8. And one of my favorite hobbies was to go scuba diving in the ocean every week with some of my friends and some of my cousins. And I think that's really where I got into the environment from the marine side, just the ocean that is surrounding my country.
Wow. And Melissa, you have been actively involved in various environmental initiatives, including leading the Bahamas 100,000 tree planting initiative. Wow, that's impressive, Melissa. 100,000 tree planting. That's amazing. And please tell us more about this project and its importance for the Bahamas and wider Caribbean region.
I'm so glad that you brought that up. That's actually my favorite project. I always love to talk about it. So the Bahamas 100,000 Tree Planting Initiative was part of a regional effort in the Caribbean called the Caribbean Tree Planting Project, which aimed to plant 1 million trees in the region. There were 22 countries participating. The Bahamas was the first one to sign on. And
Wow.
we made this really amazing plan of action that targeted the Bahamas, but we shared it regionally with the rest of the groups just as guidance and inspiration. And basically, the overall project was in efforts of combating climate change, helping globally just the efforts that different regions are putting in with planting trees to reduce the carbon emissions so that we can achieve 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2050. And we did, of course, achieve the 1 million trees. In the Bahamas, we achieved just over 126,000 trees recorded. We would have focused on growing trees as well as, I guess, obtaining donations and also allowing for persons of the public to report any numbers that they planted. So we didn't want to be biased and saying that I planted this tree, my team planted this tree, and this is what's going to our initiative. So we have ongoing restoration projects, for instance. One of the islands in the Bahamas was hit by Hurricane Dorian in 2019, and they've been doing a whole lot of red mangrove specifically, replanting and restoration efforts. And so those projects, they've contributed their numbers to us. We've actually collected a heap ton of red mangrove propagules and seedlings that we've sent to them to aid and support of those activities and so forth. But we would have focused on generally food trees, food security, so fruit trees, as well as biodiversity efforts, so different native plants. And lastly, coastal restoration, so mangroves as well as coastal plants that stabilize the dune system.
Wow, thank you so much for making how the importance of biodiversity and the kinds of the trees that you guys have planted. And also you mentioned about 1.5 degrees Celsius that we don't have to pass that. Thank you so much, Melissa. And we are wondering, what role did you play in this success of the initiative?
Of the 100K initiative?
Yeah.
Well, I was the national leader of the initiative, and so I would say I was the powerhouse behind ensuring that we had a lot of different activities going on. We got a lot of volunteers coming out, a lot of partners. We worked with 8 islands total in the country. The Bahamas is an archipelago. We do have over 700 islands and keys. There are 17 islands inhabited, and we were able to target 8 islands, and we had a very strong working system of shipping by the mail boat a lot of pallets of plants and soil and pots so that other islands could do their own activities. And we just really worked in that kind of guidance level so that we maximize the output of how many trees were planted and just a level of education and awareness. And yeah, I would just say moving forward, we as a team, I can't say that I did it all on my own, but we definitely made a huge success and a huge impact in the country. The overall goal was definitely to really provoke the thought of how one person from an individual standpoint can contribute to climate change. Because the word climate change, the phrase, it's so big in person spaces that it's just like, yeah, well, we'll deal with that when, it gets worse. But when it gets worse, then how do you deal with that? Because just generally, how do you deal with that? Well, there are simple ways that as an individual, you can contribute to climate action, and planting a tree is one of them.
Wow, thank you. That's really amazing, Melissa. You're not just as an environmental and also climate scientist, but you also have an impressive female leadership that can be a role model for young people, especially for the girls and the women out there. Wow, that's amazing as national leader. And also you've worked as a project manager for the IW Eco under the Ministry of Housing and Environment in the Bahamas. You work in for the land, water, and ecosystem management projects. Would you please to tell us more about this project, please?
Of course. So this is actually my past project before I went off to do my master's degree. And I did this coinciding the tree planting initiative. So the tree planting initiative was my volunteer capacity,
Ah,
and the IWECO project was my job. So IWECO, implementing land, water, and ecosystems management in the Bahamas. It was a project that was implemented by the United Nations Environment Program. It was funded by GEF, the Global Environment Facility, and it was executed by the Ministry of Environment and Housing at that time. It's actually now titled the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources. But I was the national project coordinator, and I would have been in charge of ensuring that project activities basically started flowing. The project was supposed to begin in 2016, but there are unfortunately some delays why it did not begin as yet. And I came in 2020, and we made a significant amount of progress with establishing a team, our stakeholders, confirming the budget, and just getting everything rolling. And unfortunately, of course, that was the year that COVID-19 also happened. And so a lot of challenges began to really take place in terms of the fact that the island is not the capital that I live on, and that the office that's managing the project is based out of. So the travel back and forth that would have been expected was then reduced. But we found ways to, get around that by utilizing different means of technologies. However, of course, as I mentioned earlier, Hurricane Dorian was one of the major challenges that we also had to deal with this project, because we would have still been in recovery mode, and the country is still at large in recovery mode from this. And so then you also had to deal with that capacity and those considerations. But needless to say, we were able to achieve a lot and really make some progress during the time frame that I was there before I went off to school. And this was a project very near and dear to my heart. We focused on building a watershed management plan for the east end of Grand Bahama, and that would have been inclusive of implementing a biodiversity inventory, so establishing what species are within that watershed sector, as well as developing a sustainable tourism sector that the residents, for instance, had some level of ecotourism training. And lastly, there were aspects of doing some restoration activities. So
Mm-hmm.
some of the creeks had these, roadways that were built through them kind of just improperly. And so the restoration efforts would have restored generally the ecosystem at large, so that the flooding would be reduced into the communities. Because when storms and surges came, because of the cut off from the creek operating as it should, the communities would be flooded by the seawater. And all of these efforts are still ongoing. I believe the project is under new management, but definitely something near and dear to my heart. And I was really happy to be a part of this, and especially coinciding, like I said, with the tree planting initiative. It
Mm-hmm.
really built my management skills, especially in the environmental sector here in the Bahamas.
Impressive. Melissa, you mentioned about the flood, and you know, uh, we also believe that you have years of conserving the nature and witnessing what happened in the Bahamas. And can you please share some of the most pressing environmental issues currently facing the Bahamas?
Well, climate change. So climate change, of course, I think we all are seeing, if not in the past having noticed earlier, now we're definitely seeing that climate change is proving to be a very significant issue day by day and year by year. Climate change is a complex term, like I said earlier, but in simple words, it's basically our planet getting warmer much faster, largely because of human activities. And here in the Bahamas, this warming can lead to more frequent, stronger hurricanes, more rising sea level issues, and the loss of beautiful coral reefs because of the warming oceans, for instance. And we're already seeing the effects here. We've been seeing the effects, but now they're just intensifying. So those are a lot of the aspects here in the Bahamas that we've been seeing from the environmental side based on climate change issues.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And how do you plan to use your title and platform as Miss Universe Bahamas to encourage young people in the Bahamas to become more involved in environmental conservation and climate change action?
Well, I plan to use my term as Miss Universe Bahamas 2023 as a way to raise awareness about climate change and the need for climate action. These terms often frighten people due to feeling as though at the individual scale, one cannot really make an impact. However, I hope that through clear communication, that people are aware that there are things at the personal level as well as at like a community or group level, and even at the national scale, that there are things that persons can do. So like conserving energy, being mindful of different transportation means that persons are engaging in, and even participating in environmental events or activities or supporting their local nonprofit organizations. There are things that you can do from the individual self.
All right, thank you, Melissa. And then, can you share one memorable story or experience from your environmental work that touch your heart?
Well, I already mentioned swimming and diving. And I would say that something that really propelled me into the climate change space. I used to dive often, like I said, and I remember seeing these really vibrant, these beautiful coral reefs that over the years just started to dull down and dull down. And some of them have even resulted in losses. In addition to the issues presented by humans, of course, climate change is the leading factor that's targeting corals because of the warming atmosphere that's resulting in the warming oceans, that's resulting in the acidification of the oceans, and therefore addressing the major troublemaker, aka climate change, is the way that I see fit to move forward in trying to make a difference to protect, preserve, and conserve our environment.
Thank you. And lastly, Melissa, many people are passionate about environmental issues but may not know where to start. What advice would you like to give, particularly young people who want to make difference in their communities and support sustainability efforts?
Well, I would tell any persons thinking of that, just remember that making a difference doesn't always require large actions. Even small, consistent changes in your lifestyle or your habits can make a positive impact. The key to staying informed is taking action and inspiring others to do the same. Collectively, all of these efforts will contribute to a more sustainable and environmentally friendly future. And some practical steps I would say are, educate yourself. Start learning more about the environment issues that I guess concern you the most, whether it's climate change or plastic pollution, deforestation, whatever topics are there. Reduce your carbon footprint. So when you leave the room, turn the light off, turn the fan off. If you're not in the house, turn the AC off. Support renewable energy. If you have the opportunity to switch into solar or some other kind of renewable energy source that's not from a non-renewable like coal or oil. Again, like I mentioned earlier, sustainable transportation. If you have the option to carpool with someone, or if you have, I guess maybe your country is built where riding a bike or riding a scooter or anything that's not from a non-renewable energy source power, like cars that run off of gasoline, if you
Mhm.
have those options, definitely try and consider them. And there are just so many other things that you can do, involving yourself in community initiatives, volunteering at local nonprofit organization events and activities that they're having, educating others. There's a lot that you can do, and just stay focused, stay encouraged, and just do it. Just do it. Give it a try.
Yes, yes, do it. This is such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing your inspiring story.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and thank you everyone for joining us. Let's collaborate to make this world a better place. I'm Gulo from JDPNS. Thank you and see you again.